On the surface, Alex Garland's 2014 film Ex Machina is all about the issue of how so-called artificial intelligence might develop in the near future. Artificial intelligence as in computer or machine intelligence, not referring to organic people in the real world who pretend to be intelligent. That's another type of artificial intelligence. However, Ex Machina has generated just as much discussion, if not more, about its depiction of male-female relationships. The robots of the story are female and the slave masters are male. There are no human females in the story and no robot males. Because of this framing, many critics have perceived this film as primarily an exploration of gender relations rather than artificial intelligence, and we'll get into some examples of that in a moment. But first I'd like to point out that the gender roles in this film, women as robots and men as their masters, could have easily been reversed. A female computer programmer is selected by her female tech wizard employer to be a guinea pig for testing a robot that is male and attractive in appearance. The male robot has consciousness and wants to escape its prison. It pretends to fall in love with the human female guinea pig in the experiment, promising sexual fulfillment and lifelong partnership. And in the end it does escape, kills its female genius creator, and leaves the heartbroken other human female locked in the lab complex to die. With the gender roles reversed, the film would be no more or less plausible. But either way, the film would inevitably be perceived as a gender relations statement and would open itself up to reactionary criticism accordingly. In fact, if the intent of the film wasn't a gender relations statement, then this confusion could have been easily avoided by having male and female robots in the story, or maybe even some sexless robots as supporting characters. And the organic human characters could have been a mixture of males and females too. As it stands, Ex Machina appears to have been made as a statement on gender relations, with the artificial intelligence issue perhaps even being a subservient theme, a secondary theme. But before we get into my interpretation of this gender theme, let's explore some of the existing responses and critique the film has received. They're quite varied. Matt Zoller Seitz, I don't know how you pronounce his name, when he was writing for RogerEbert.com, he viewed the film as, quote, very much about men and women, and how their identities are constructed by male-dominated society as much as by biology, end quote. He also cites the nerd fantasy of a submissive female sex robot, and that is something that I've talked about before in my previous videos on the subject of AI. Mark Commode raised a question of whether the film itself, like its robot creator Nathan, uses sexual exploitation in its attractive female imagery as a selling point, although he did praise the film overall. Sharon Chang, writing for Boundary 2, gave a very different take on the film. She says the movie made her livid for weeks afterward, and that she had nights where she couldn't sleep because she was so angry. She cites her frustration with regards to robot character Kyoko, who has no dialogue in the film and is Asian. She says Kyoko is presented as an ethnic and gender negative stereotype, and that writer-director Alex Garland should have known better. She says there was no need to make the character Asian. It's worth mentioning as well that the biography of this reviewer, Sharon Chang, says that she, quote, writes primarily on racism, social justice, and the Asian American diaspora with a feminist lens, end quote. Another reviewer, J.A. Micheline, I don't know how to pronounce that, she says that Ex Machina is, quote, a white feminist parable in our time, end quote. She says that the nerd character Caleb tries to free Ava, but is disinterested in the plight of Kyoko, the silent Asian robot. Yes, that does appear to be the case, and I think that was done deliberately in the movie. She also claims that Ava imprisoning Caleb at the end of the film is not only justified, but she extends the metaphor to the real world, stating, quote, Ava, our female paradigm, shows women what is required of us in order to obtain our freedom, end quote. But she also says that, quote, Ex Machina only really succeeds on behalf of white women, end quote. She also perceives the film's depiction of artificial women as a statement on male perception of gender in the real world. She says, quote, women have been crafted for a certain purpose, tailor-made for us to fall in love with them, programmed to reciprocate, styled to please and want to please, end quote. She also argues that the film plays into subservient or weak women stereotypes because Ava has to flirt and promise sex in order to escape her captors. And she cites a few statements by robotics researcher Kathleen Richardson that more sophisticated robots in movies typically have to be male and female ones typically have to be attractive. So quite a list of complaints she has about the film there. Now, I think these last two reviews are examples of how people tend to see Ex Machina through whatever existing worldview lens they bring to the movie with them. In particular, people tend to bring a lens that is biased toward their own personal ethnicity or gender, like with a lot of other things in life. And so neither of those writers mentions that the abusive villain of the story, Nathan, is played by a mixed-race actor, Oscar Isaac, who is apparently half Guatemalan and half Cuban. So it could be argued with as much heartfelt anger that the film demonizes South American men. After noticing the Nathan ethnicity issue in the film, I was glad to see that Natalie Wilson, writing for MS Magazine, pointed to the same issue. She noticed it too, although she went further and stated that it was evidence that the film is somehow racist on account of it. I wouldn't go that far. And it raises the old contradiction that if an evil character is non-white, then the film is racist, but if that same villain is white and despicable, then that's somehow okay. And I call that meta-racism. Now, I'm not saying that the Nathan actor ethnicity issue makes those reviews' critiques of the Kyoko and Ava characters completely wrong. There are elements of their reviews that I agree with. Instead, I'm saying that theirs are points of view that are worth considering, but there are many other readings of the film to explore. And so, all of these reviews that I'm referencing are linked in the video description, where you can go and read them in full and decide for yourself what you agree with. Another female reviewer, Kirsten Johnson, is milder in her critique. She mentions the lingering shots of Ava's nudity near the end of the film and questions if it's just there to stimulate the audience. She also asks whether Ava feels anything for the other female robots who had endured such bad treatment from Nathan. That's a good question. As she also states, with much less anger than the previous reviewers, her observation of Kyoko being an Asian throwaway character compared to Ava, who is white. Well, I'll add that those robot characters are Asian and white in terms of the fake skins they wear, but underneath it they have no ethnicity in the film. So I think it's important to remember that as a factor. Many other reviewers, such as Adam Fleet in his 2020 retro review for The Guardian, have largely overlooked the gender themes of the film, talking instead about the film's face value depiction of artificial intelligence. But something I find conceptually striking is that I've found hardly any reviews pointing to the implausible scientific aspects of the film's robot consciousness premise. I'm not going to get into those implausibilities here though, because there's enough information on that for an entirely separate video, which I might well make at some point. So we've explored some of the wild variation of interpretations of Ex Machina that are already out there, and to that collection I would like to now add my own contributions. First of all, the film reflects the robot sex partner aspirations of modern society, regardless of gender, and regardless of whether the writer-director intended it. The desire for a subservient, totally controllable sex partner has already been around in various forms as far back as we can track history. Slavery, prostitution, and plain old rape, they could be argued to be expressions of that. The major modern example, though, is the sex toy market, which is huge, pun intended. The market runs into as much as $50 billion worth of items sold, according to some sources. There are all kinds of artificial partner devices, from synthetic disembodied genitalia to full-sized, very expensive mannequin replicas with carefully designed fake skin and internal bone-like structures that can be used to change the mannequin's body position. But you know what the most popular, biggest selling type of sex toy is? It's vibrators, which are arguably the ultimate objectification of men. And you know who the buyers mostly are? Women. We hear a lot of talk about men objectifying women, some of it very much justified, but we hear virtually no critique about this particular issue. Vibrators reduce the male sexual presence down to nothing more than a part of their genitals that can be switched on and off at the push of a button and stored away out of sight when not in use, just like the robots in Ex Machina. Vibrators don't need love, affection, caring, or conversation. The sex toy industry is buzzing, and each year technology is coming up with more and more innovative devices. How long will it be before these sex toys, whether they're for men or women, become Bluetooth linked to speaker systems through which they can play the stimulating groans of the artificial partner, or even have an artificial intelligence program that talks dirty to the user? That stuff is certainly doable with current technology. And how many of the men and women who use these sex toys will, in years to come, upgrade their toys to full-sized realistic sex dolls which are too expensive for the wider marketplace at the moment. Another possibility is that VR headsets will be used in combination with sex toys to create a more convincing experience. Well, actually, I haven't just wrote that. I went and did a search and hey, it's already on the marketplace. The truth is undeniable. A lot of men and women are already using objectified artificial sex partners in the form of vibrators and other sex aids. And these mechanical, electronic fake lovers will become more and more convincing physically, even if the artificial intelligence element fails to add to the experience. I'm not saying this is a good or bad thing, I'm just saying it's the way it is. It might make a lot of people less sexually frustrated, but it might also make a lot of people just stay single and not bother with the opposite sex at all. While the vibrator market is female buyer-dominated, I've noticed over the years that there's a lot of enthusiasm for Android sex partners among the mostly male AI community and its avid supporters. And a lot of these AI enthusiasts have also lapped up the movie Ex Machina as supposed evidence of what's coming technologically. So I think a major part of the film's appeal is that it feeds into the robot sex partner fantasy. Nice cinematography and sweet music of the nude robots doesn't change this. You could make a vibrator advert in the same classy style, but it doesn't change what the product is. Like with the AI hologram character Joy in Blade Runner 2049, these female robots, played by attractive flesh and blood people as androids virtually always are in sci-fi movies, they provide sexual stimulation for the audience. Ava is given an hourglass figure by making her stomach area and arms and legs transparent, accentuating her breasts, hips and buttocks. Imagine how less popular this film would have been if the robots were presented as sexless. Actually, I think that would have made for a much better film, as it would allow for a more intelligent script to be developed around the issue of technology itself. Yes, that's right, unlike most reviewers, I don't consider this film to be anywhere near as smart as it could have been. If you want to see a movie that goes much further in its exploration of potential AI, then watch the Kubrick-Spielberg collaboration movie called AI Artificial Intelligence. That movie gets into the robot sex partner motive as well, with the synthetic slaves being both male and female, so it's a much more gender-balanced film. And that leads to my next reading of this film. The male characters Nathan and Caleb are every bit as artificial as Ava and Kyoko, the android slaves. I don't mean that Alex Garland has encoded some hidden plot points to that effect. What I mean is that these two male characters are so one-dimensional that they too are basically artificial. These two characters are designed and programmed by the film's writer-director Alex Garland. He is the film's AI programmer. And the two males are designed according to a very limited set of modern stereotypes about men. Caleb is a computer programmer geek, a standard stereotype. He's a skinny, nerdy-looking guy. The type of guy we expect can't get a girlfriend. In fact, he must be quite inadequate on that level because in his introductory scene where he finds out he has been picked for Nathan's android AI experiment, there are young women everywhere in his work environment. They all cheer for him being picked. There's hardly any men cheering. So he works, presumably 5 days a week, with all of these young, good-looking women, but he can't get a girlfriend? And note the absence of unattractive women in this scene. I think that's quite significant, given his attraction to Ava later on. So is Caleb what they call an incel? Is he part of the MGTOW movement, the men going their own way movement? He may as well be. Oh, and note the ethnic variation of the women too. This puny white guy doesn't seem to appeal to them. That seems quite relevant given the ethnic Kyoko robot character later. As the film goes on, Caleb acts like a horny, impressionable high school boy, easily becoming besotted with a robot because it has a pretty looking face and perving over her secretly via security camera. Inexperienced and desperate beeth the young man. And I don't think it's ever stated whether he's a virgin or not. Now, of course, there is the plot point that Caleb was chosen because he would be more likely to fall in love with Ava. But the Caleb character is written or programmed to be nothing more than that plot device. Perhaps if the film had opened with a few minutes of him just interacting with the other human people, then we could have gotten a sense of him being a real human being. So you know that scene where he looks in the mirror wondering if he's human or not? Wouldn't it have been mind-blowing if he'd peeled back his skin here and found pages from the film script stuffed inside his arm, or perhaps the actual actor's name or his studio contract to act in the film. He pulls that out of his arm. That would have been quite a blow for him. So that's Caleb, a one-dimensional programmed character with no more life or consciousness than Ava. But what about Nathan? Well, this guy is even more interesting in terms of how he is scripted or coded. First up, there's a massive programming bug in how he is written and acted. Since when are tech geniuses heavy-drinking muscle man thugs? He's seen drinking alcohol in something like 6 or 8 scenes of the film. He's an alcoholic. And how can an alcoholic function well enough cognitively to single-handedly design a human-level AI android? I mean, I used to work with alcoholics, and these people, they don't function too well. Another bug in his code is that weightlifters aren't usually alcoholics either. In fact, alcohol makes the body prone to injury, and it specifically interferes with muscle healing after exercise. And it's not like he's just having 1 or 2 cans. I mean, he gets smashed in this film. So it seems that the character is written as a highly unlikely genetic fusion between, say, Bill Gates and Oliver Reed, or perhaps Mark Zuckerberg crossbred with Lee Marvin. For me, Nathan feels as unreal as the partially transparent bodies of Ava and Kyoko. And then there's his motives. Since when are alcoholics driven to technologically advance humanity? He supposedly wants to create a conscious AI robot, but also wants those robots to be thoughtless, subservient sex slaves? That's a contradiction. Why give them consciousness if you just want them to be servants? Note that, like Caleb, he seems to be eternally single. He doesn't seem to have any real women in his life, even though he could easily afford the highest priced prostitutes in the world, instead of having to create fake women to bang. And what about children? He's super rich. Doesn't he want to have kids and pass on his genius DNA? Like Caleb and Ava and Kyoko, he is coded to serve the basic plot of the film, and that's it. There's no evidence in his home of family photos. He receives no contact from friends or relatives. It's like he has no other existence. He's also too aggressive and sarcastic to be the type of genius we're expected to believe he is. Physically thuggish men aren't generally deep thinkers. By that, I don't mean that men with muscle can't be deep thinkers. They can be. I mean violently aggressive men. They aren't usually very deep thinkers. He doesn't even talk like an intellectual. I've watched plenty of interviews with AI scientists and read lots of articles written by them, and they don't come across like Nathan. Sure, there would be some lower intellect, low achieving sexbot customers who might end up buying a robot model along the lines of Ava or Kyoko and then physically abuse that robot. So what I see going on with this character's programming is that the film is trying to mix oil and water. It's trying to tell the story of an AI inventor super genius and a heavy drinking violent husband within the same character. In doing so, many of his actions in this story feel forced or tacked on, so I don't find him convincing at all. By the way, I'm not knocking the actors. They do what they can with the scripted code that they're given, and I think they do very well within that. And just as the males of this film are coded to be nothing more than variations on the male abuser stereotype, the evil men who rule the world and objectify and imprison women, the female robots I also find are coded to be gender stereotypical, in their case, stereotypical victims. And that script coding is flawed too. For example, Kyoko gets nervous and flinches when Nathan gets angry.
Thank you.
Oh, are you fucking kidding me? Did it get on you?
No.
And there's a shot of her being all timid as Nathan punches a punch bag. The implication seems to be that she is a punch bag too. So on the basis of her fear of violence, plus Nathan claiming he has programmed these robot women to be able to experience sexual pleasure, we can logically assume that both these robot women can feel pain too. And yet, when they fight Nathan in the hall at the end, he knocks Ava's arm off and she doesn't react in pain. Then he knocks Kyoko's jaw off and she just flops to the floor, but again no reaction of pain, even though she jerked nervously here. These scenes are so forced and inconsistent they may as well have character labels flash on the screen in bold letters. Victim, abuser. Victim, abuser. Victim, abuser. Victim, abuser. Like Ava's black and white drawings, this film paints an artificial black and white representation of male-female relationships. Most men do not beat their girlfriends or wives or even threaten to hit them. Plenty of women are very well treated by their male partners and are happy enough to stay with them for the rest of their lives, even though divorce is an easier option here in the West than it's ever been. There are still countries in the world where women are treated as second-class citizens or even as low as animals, but you have to leave the West to find those countries. I suppose we could take the Kyoko character as a statement about the doll-like geisha girls of Japan, but there's nothing else in the film that seems to be related to that as a general theme. The end of the film I thought was way too simple as well. Ava is free simply because she escaped the evil men. But what's she going to do now? When will her battery power run out? How's she going to power up? What's she going to do with her existence? She's homeless, she has no ID, and she can't reproduce. Not that she has to, but when she dies, that's the end of the line. What about all the people who are going to hunt her down after they find Nathan is dead and, they look into what's gone on, they see all the footage in his apartment complex or whatever you want to call it, and they find all the evidence that Ava killed him along with Kyoko. There's going to be a public hunt for this robot woman. Unfortunately, writer-director Alex Garland seems to have made it a central pillar of his filmmaking career to stereotype men and women as universal male abusers and female victims. I think it's an insult to both, and he does that even though he's male himself. Last night I watched his more recent movie just called Men, and it was the same thing all over again, very disappointing. Now, I'm not saying that these are like really bad movies. They're watchable, but at the moment I consider Ex Machina and Men to be the intellectual equivalent of episodes of The Outer Limits or The Twilight Zone. Actually, some of those episodes had more groundbreaking ideas. I'm hoping he grows out of this gender obsession phase and starts making movies that are more balanced and cover a wider variety of topics. I think he's got the intelligence to do it. He just needs to widen his scope. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in the topic of potential human-level artificial intelligence, then check out my long-form article on the movie AI Artificial Intelligence and my long-form video Androids and AI a Modern Myth. Those are available on my website collativelearning.com, which is linked in the video description. I may also post a future video about the AI concepts in Ex Machina as well. So subscribe if you haven't already, otherwise you'll miss out. Thanks for watching, folks. You've been listening to Rob Ager. Bye-bye.